say welcome back to Meech Speaks.
Welcome back to Meech Speaks.
No, Meech Speaks.
Welcome back to 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 Meech Speaks.
I want to say something. A pie, motherfucker.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Meech Speaks. I'm your host, Demetrius Dakeman, also known as Meech Speaks. Now, before we get started with this episode, don't forget to head on over to your favorite streaming platform, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, and leave this podcast an honest review, because this podcast deserves to grow just as much as we do. All right, so what's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Where am I at? Happy Monday, everybody. And one thing that I really want to just say is that, I hope that we are enjoying the Friday episodes. Yes, there are now 2 episodes every week. Mondays, you have an episode with myself. And then on Fridays, you have an Unpack Friday episode with myself and Artavius Merritt. Now, just to give a little backstory with me and RT. Me and RT have known each other since we were in high school. And although I went off to the military, and we all know I talk about mindset, we all know I talk about motivation, and we all know that I talk about what it means to be human in and out of the military, RT went off to college where he will become a clinical psychiatrist, also a life coach, and he was he specialized in relationships as well. So we have 2 different perspectives, 2 different mindsets coming together to bring such a dynamic episode that I love sharing with y'all and also love doing. So once again, if the episodes resonate, please shoot us a DM on different topics that you will want to hear. And don't forget, once again, I cannot stress this enough, leave a review, because we can only grow if you help us grow. All right, so let's get started with today's episode. To be honest with you, I've been running my head into a wall on how I would even, like that opening line or that opening dialogue that I usually have for each episode that builds up to the episode, you know what I mean? And I've been trying to figure out exactly what I would say. But to be honest with you, this topic is so blunt that I think that I could just skip all the bullshit and just come out and just say it. I don't know who needs to hear this, but you suck. You know what I mean? Like, you suck, and it's not their fault. It's not the situation's fault. It's not the circumstances' fault. To be honest with you, it's you. You feel me? It's you. You suck. Yes, it's a new tasker. I get that. And you're dropping the ball. You suck. Yes, it could, you completed it, but you could have done better. Yeah, you suck. Yeah, you, no matter how you cut it, you suck. But if I wrote that down, right? Like if I wrote that down, I never wrote it down as you suck, period. I wrote it down as you suck, comma. And the reason why I put a comma at the end is because there can always be a but and there can always be an and. And a lot of times we hear that or we feel that, and we immediately will say to ourselves that this is a definite feeling. Like this is the end all be all. But the reality is that you can suck in the moment, especially when something is new, but you can always get better. But there's always room to go. So with that being said, today's episode is all about that feeling of you suck and how to deal with it. All right, so first things first, let's talk about the feeling. All right, so when we usually feel that you suck feeling, it's an internal feeling. You know what I mean? Like it usually materializes as a voice inside of our head. It turns into, this whole aura that we have about ourselves. And that's really what it is. It's something about ourselves that we're not meeting the mark. And what happens is that you go through some type of situation, you're usually confident in it, and you end up falling on your face. Or maybe it's a new tasker that you have never done before and you still fall on your face. And who you are inside, who you are in your head and who you are in reality are not matching up. And I'll say that again, like who you think you are and who you are portraying are not aligning right now. And what happens is that you feel like as if like, damn, man, like, I suck today. I'm the last one doing this, or I'm not performing the way that everybody else performs. Don't get me started, man. Like it really goes down to this, it really boils down to this feeling of you're just not good enough. And I've been there, you know what I mean? I know I came off pretty blunt in the very beginning of this episode, but I've been there. You know what I mean? I've been at my lowest point where I feel like, damn, I suck. And I've been consumed by that feeling to the point where it almost felt impossible to climb out of the hole of self-doubt that I had created for myself. Also, for those who don't know, I work over at the Martial Arts Center of Excellence, where we do combat conditioning, we do sparring. If you're in the military, you know exactly where I work at. And to give a little bit more context, we create these training events for the best Marines in the United States Marine Corps. Like, these are the best within their unit, their sections, their shops, and they come to the Mace, where we train them for the next 7 weeks. And when I tell you that I've seen some of the Marines that they good at they shop, but to be honest with you, at they shop ain't saying a lot. You know what I mean? They good at they section, but that section ain't saying a lot. You know what I mean? And they end up, they suck. And that's not me throwing shade. That's not me putting them down. That's just me looking at that's me observing the reality that we both are sitting in at that moment. You know what I mean? Like, there's a standard and nobody in there, that person is not meeting that standard. And two things can usually happen in that scenario. You know what I mean? Like, you can say that you suck and you can stay there, just like what I mentioned, the period. Or you can say that you suck and admit that you suck right now, put that comma, and then begin to grow. So with that being said, I will go ahead and just provide the tips that I use to get over that feeling when I feel like I suck. Now, please understand, though, these are just tips that I use. If you look on the internet, there are many tips on this feeling right here, but I'm going to just keep it a buck with you. It's very more like Herbalife-ish. It's more of namaste, you know what I mean? It's very like self-care-ish, you know. I'm a blunt person. I like to keep it real. So with that being said, like, the tips that I'm gonna provide you are gonna keep it real. All right, so first things first, the one thing that you don't want to do is that you don't want to ignore that feeling. You don't want to ignore that voice. And I bring that up, man, because when I was looking up just tips and tricks and when I was in that phase, you know, everyone said that you need to ignore that feeling. Like, if you feel like you suck and you start telling yourself that you suck, or you start hearing that voice that says that you suck, you need to ignore it and put it behind you. And I completely understand. You know what I mean? Like, I completely understand what they're trying to say, because, you know, that self-doubt, that negative talk will definitely hinder your performance and put you in this box. But if you keep ignoring it, you won't acknowledge it. And the problem is that a lot of motherfuckers suck at something, but because they ignore that voice in their head, they refuse to grow. There are people that suck, and because they refuse to acknowledge it, they're now on a team and they're holding the team back. They're the last one on every drill. They're the last one to complete every deadline. They're the last one in every facet of their lives. And because they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they suck, you get what I'm saying? Like, because they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they suck, they never grow from that. They think that they're this overachiever, or they think that they're meeting the mark, but in reality, they're below, or at the very, they're either below or very dead last. You know what I mean? And it's kind of sad because of the simple fact that, you know, actually, I'm gonna just say that part one more time. They walk around with this whole idea that, oh, I'm good, I'm meeting the mark, I'm doing the same as everybody else. They are not average. They're below average. They're below the mark. They're not meeting the standard. And the reason why they don't even realize that they're not meeting the standards is because they will not acknowledge the fact that they suck. So I will tell you this right now. When you hear that voice that says, I suck, don't ignore it. It's saying it for a reason. It's doing it. You hear that voice because you're doing something that is causing that trigger. You see something that you know for a fact is not right. You are doing something that you know is not meeting the standard that was set forth. And whether that standard is an outside standard that you were told to meet, or that's an inside standard that you hold for yourself. But if you hear that voice, don't you dare fucking ignore it. Don't be consumed by it, but don't you dare ignore it. Instead of ignoring it, ask yourself why. You know what I mean? And what I mean by ask yourself why do you suck? There's usually like we're rational creatures. You know what I mean? Like we love to problem solve. So if you hear that voice and you hear, you suck, immediately ask why. Why do I suck right now? What is it that is causing me not to perform at the standard in which it was set for me, or the standard that I have set for myself? What is it that is holding me back? Is it because the tasker is new? Is it because I lack the information? Is it really the personnel? Is it really the circumstance? Am I having a bad day? Like, ask yourself why. You know what I mean? The same way that if you saw your check engine light come on, you wouldn't fucking ignore that. You know what I mean? The same way that you saw the gas light come on, you wouldn't fucking ignore that. You would you already know. If the gas comes on, then I need to put gas in. And if the check engine light comes on, I got to take that to a mechanic and find out why it came on. So if I hear that I suck at something, you know what I mean? Then I have to ask myself, why am I sucking right now? And when you ask yourself why, you have acknowledged. And if you're going to acknowledge, you already have begun the steps needed in order to improve onto yourself. Step 2, or tip 2. If you're going to quit, understand that there's no shame in quitting, but only quit if you have concrete reason. Now, I'll address one thing is that, there's no shame in quitting. I'll just keep it completely honest with you. And anybody that you ever hear say, never give up, never back down, never quit, ain't never been in a situation that broke them physically or broke them mentally. I'm going to be completely honest with you. You know what I mean? And to be honest, anybody will quit. Matter of fact, everybody will quit. You put them in the right situation, in the right timing, under the right circumstances, with the right amount of pressure, I guarantee you they'll break. I guarantee you they will break. And the problem is that, everybody will say never give up, never back down, but that's bullshit. You put them in the right circumstances with the right amount of pressure, I guarantee you they will quit. I've seen it, and this isn't me, on my high horse. This is me coming, flying in on Experience Airlines. You put people under the right amount of in the right circumstances, I guarantee you they will quit. And they may not verbalize it. Because everyone loves to say that I won't quit, but their body betrays their words every single time. And when I say that their body betrays their words, you can see them already, like their body is no longer able to continue to keep pushing forward. Their body is just moving in autopilot, doing everything completely wrong. Their teammates are moving them. Their body language is shying away from the task itself. They're burnt out. They're exhausted. They've already quit a long time ago. So when you hear somebody say, I never quit, just go ahead and just take that with a grain of salt. Also, I will tell you right now that there's no shame in quitting. There's no shame in quitting. And the reason why I say that there's no shame in quitting is because if you stay in an adverse situation where it's constantly beating you down, and when I mean by beating you down, I'm talking about beating you down physically, beating you down emotionally, beating you down mentally, that shit leaves damaging scars that take very long to heal. And sometimes they just don't. They will end up making you gun shy, to the point where anytime a similar situation comes up, you will immediately run. So I will always tell people that there's no shame in quitting. To be honest with you, it takes a certain level of courage that to take a step back and realize, like, hey man, I need to walk away from this. Despite what everybody else is going to say, I need to walk away from this. We talk about being selfless and selfish, you know what I mean? To be on a team and realize that your performance, your behavior, your effort is what's making the team unsuccessful, and saying to yourself, I'm walking away from this. I quit. Because if I continue to keep going, I'm just fucking my teammates over. That's what selflessness is. And selfishness is also realizing, because hey, I'm gonna play both sides of the fence here. You know what I mean? Because I tell a lot of people, like, hey, be selfish, take care of yourself. If you realize you're in a situation that is hurting you and all you have become is a emotional punching bag, a physical punching bag, you know what I mean, a mental punching bag, then be selfish and say to yourself, I quit. Fuck what everybody else has to say. They're not living your story right now. They're not living your life. You are. they're not going to have to deal with those scars. You will. But only quit if you have concrete reasoning. Don't quit just because it's hard. And what I mean by that is and I hope y'all can imagine how my body language was when I did that. But don't quit just because it's hard. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, like, you know, this isn't going my way. I'm walking away. Quit because you realize that you're not prepared. Quit because you know that you can come back to this scenario or you can come back to this situation better if you had the proper planning needed. Quit when there is concrete reason why you should not be there or why you should quit. Whether that's financial, whether that's emotional, whether that's physical. Sometimes you have to be able to realize and know yourself to say, I'm not ready. It ain't no shame in that. That's concrete reason. You know how many times, you know how many people I would come up to and shake their hand and say, like, when they would say, hey, I'm not ready, I quit. A younger version of me used to be like, oh man, you're just a quitter. When I got older and I realized what they were doing, man, I would shake their hand. They did something that not a lot of people would do. To take a step back and realize and know themselves and say to themselves, like, hey, I'm not ready for this. I'll come back, but I'm not ready right now. And if I stay, I'm gonna get hurt. If I stay, I'm gonna hinder. If I stay, I'm gonna do everything but succeed. Hey, nah, I'm good. So I will tell you, quit. And understand, ain't no shame in that. But if you gonna quit, make sure that you quit with concrete reasoning. Lastly, grow from it. If you feel like you suck and you choose to ignore it and you choose to stay and you choose to stick it out despite your performance throughout the entirety of the situation, understand that you're not going to grow from it. I think that's the main reason why I say don't ever ignore that feeling. Life has a way of trying to teach you a lesson. Life has a way of trying to tell you things in the hidden lines. You know what I mean? Like, you got to read between the lines sometimes in the lessons that life is trying to teach you. And if you refuse to ignore it, you refuse to grow. And that's one thing that we should always be striving for, some type of growth within the situation. If you quit from something and you just walking away saying to yourself, I'm glad that that's just over with, and you're not trying to pull the lesson that that's trying to teach you, then congratulations, man. Like, you quit for no fucking reason. You know what I mean? Like, you never gonna grow from that. And the thing is that if you don't pull that lesson, that lesson gonna come back around again. You know what I mean? And if you always running from it and you always ignoring it, then how are you growing from it? Just like what I mentioned earlier, we all have felt this feeling before. You know, that feeling of, I suck. But the thing is that if you hear, man, like, I suck, or if you feel like you suck, ask yourself, because it's not a period at the end, it's a comma, I suck, but what is this trying to teach me? I suck, but what can I do to grow from this? I suck, but what can I do to do better the next time that this comes back around? The idea is always going to grow. And I'll tell you right now, man, like, this final tip right here, it's going to be very hard to grow from it in the middle of it. You know what I mean? While the adversity is happening, it's real hard to take that lesson because you in the middle of it. But when you walk away from it, when it's nowhere, when it's not going on anymore, when you walk away from it, you need to go ahead and replay that scenario back. Don't just live in the bad, but live in that scenario and ask yourself, hey man, like, what went wrong? Do a quick playback. Look at the footage inside your mind. A lot of times, like, and this is probably why if they told you to ignore it, or they throw that tip out there to ignore it and don't be consumed by it. But if you're trying to grow from your losses, right, you got to run that footage back. And you got to ask yourself what went wrong. And when you ask yourself what went wrong, you need to also ask yourself, how can I had prepared for it? And what can I do to prevent it the next time? One thing that you got to understand is that we all have been in that situation. There ain't no shame in that. Ain't no shame in saying that you suck. It doesn't mean that you don't value yourself. It doesn't. It just means that, you know, you're responding to what is being put in front of you. That's all, man. Now, one thing that I will always tell you is that don't live, don't be consumed by it. Don't let it be your everyday life. Don't live it every single day. But at the same time, if you're always good and you have never felt this bad feeling, are you really challenging yourself? And if you've never told yourself that you suck at least once, at least once, can you really say that you've been in the trenches, overcoming some adversity? And just like that, another extraordinary thought left this ordinary mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. Now, do me a favor, if you're on Apple or Spotify, don't forget to leave a 5-star review for this podcast. And lastly, hit that subscribe button because this podcast deserves to grow just as